what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode on Fill a Limit Fishing. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Got something exciting to talk about tonight. As exciting as fishing line gets, but that's what we're talking about. Fishing line. Just like in the last video when we were talking about fishing lures, my top fishing lures, I have some top fishing lines as well that I like to stick with. And you're going to hear it over and over again from me. Simplicity, simplifying the game of fishing so you can focus on what's going on the water and capitalizing on catching fish. For me, I'm throwing really three types of line, okay? I'm throwing heavy braided line, fluorocarbon lines, and monofilament line. Most of my heavy flipping situations, when I'm pitching into bulrushes, lily pads, and canes, here in Southwest Florida, I'm throwing the Power Pro braided line, 65-pound test. That's a go-to bait that you need to have when you're flipping heavy vegetation. On more of my kind of worm fishing and more sparse vegetation, and skipping docks, and fishing on the bank and more open water, I'm throwing Trilene 100% fluorocarbon Berkeley line, and also in the past I've used the Berkeley Vanish, but fluorocarbon is a go-to must. The sensitivity, the knot strength, and the overall abrasion resistance is second to none as compared to mono. And of course the invisibility factor is definitely a plus. On my top water plugs, I'm throwing monofilament. That's when the old school mono comes into play. And what I like to throw is Trilene XL smooth casting line, and it is for the value, bang for your buck. It's a great line. You can respool it at any time you want for the cost of the line. And when I'm throwing top water plugs, I usually go 17-pound test. I really don't find any need to go any heavier or lower than that. So that's the rundown of my three lines that I use. So let's look at these lines a little bit more in depth and discuss what situations they're applied to and what not I would tie with them. Alright guys, so let's start with the Power Pro braided line. This here is 65-pound test, 100% Spectra fiber Power Pro braid, and this is what I throw almost exclusively. I found this line to be very affordable, and for the money it's been great to me. Never had a line break or a fish come off because of a poor performance in the line. So I stick with this line, and I got nothing negative to say about it. When I'm fishing this braided line, usually I'm in heavy cover, dense vegetation, and I need my knot to hold true, and I have the utmost confidence in a double Palomar knot. And what it is just a simple Palomar knot, but instead of doing a single loop around like you would right here, you go one more. Take that tag end and wrap it in there one more time. And this is said to reduce the slippage that you may get from a traditional Palomar knot on the braided line. I've never seen it slip, but I've never really fished much with just a single Palomar knot. From the day I started throwing braid, it has always been a double Palomar knot. So I've read some stuff about where a single Palomar knot slips, but I can't attest to that. But I do the double, and that knot's not going anywhere. So check that out if you haven't tried that. Alright, so next line, Trilene XL smooth casting monofilament. This, I used to use all the time back in the day when I was first getting started fishing. Monofilament, that's all that was really known at the time. It was cheap, it was strong, and you could respool anytime you want just because of the cost of the line. Now it's a little different. Now I basically just throw it on my top water plugs. and maybe for, you know, rigging up a pole for the kids or whatnot. But for top water, you can't beat it because monofilament floats. And this line, I typically, you know, throw 17-pound test would be about the lightest I go with my top water plugs. But what I do with my mono, very simple, just a traditional Palomar knot. You bring your tag end through, bring that back around like so, tight down a little bit, bring your bait through your hole. With mono, always like to wet it a little bit, bring it in nice and slow, make sure your line doesn't kink up on top of each other. Pull all your tag ends and your main line, and then you can get your tag end and cut it. You know, it doesn't need to be right down to your knot either. Leave a little for error and slippage. But that single Palomar knot on monofilament line is hard to beat. It's quick, it's easy, and it's very, very strong. Next up is our fluorocarbon. Years ago in the beginning, when fluorocarbon was, you know, kind of hitting the scene, and I was starting to make that transition, Berkeley Vanish was the first fluorocarbon line that I actually started fishing with. Back in the day, I had some, you know, terrible fish losses, especially on the hook sets. I really questioned the knot strength on the Berkeley Vanish. Since then, I've given it another shot, and it has performed actually very well for me, and I think that's twofold. I now only throw 20-pound test fluorocarbon as opposed to 8 that I was losing fish on, throwing a, you know, shaky head in the Carolinas, and my knot has changed. I used to tie a single Palomar knot with my fluorocarbon, and I believe that's just a bad knot to tie when you're dealing with fluorocarbon. So, like I said, I used to throw the Vanish, and I have since then transitioned to Berkeley Trilene 100% fluorocarbon 20-pound test. I found this to be a superior line, and some say it's the best in the business, and it's been real good to me since I started using it, so I will maintain using that line. But when it comes to my fluorocarbon knots, what I'm going to tie is what Mark Zona would call a shark knot, and I've tried a few, and I've liked this one because it's simple, it's quick, and I've proven it to be very strong. So what you do is you start out like a traditional Palomar knot. You know, I'll loop my line over, bring my tag in through the eye of the hook, and you bring it back up on itself. Now, I grab it with one hand, the loop and the main line, and I'll just turn my bait about 6 or 7 times, right? Very simple. And then you'll take that loop, tag end, and you'll bring it back through the eye of the hook, or the loop at the eye of the hook, right? Grab that loop with your other hand, and then slowly begin to cinch down. You always want to wet that, reduce the friction, and then you pull on the tag end and the main line, and then you cinch down on your main line a little bit. Make sure you inspect your knot, see that, you know, all the line has kind of is sitting nicely on top of each other. Now, with this knot, you're left with 3 tag ends. You have a loop down here that you're going to cut, and then your single tag end up top next to your main line that you're going to cut. So, and you can clean that up a little bit, but you're left with that. Shark knot, you can search it again if you need it slowed down, but I found it to be a great fluorocarbon knot, and it's worked out really well for me. I don't break off any fish really. You know, you can always count on one hand how many fish you've lost on a hook set, but overall it's been a great knot, great line. And I'm going to continue to use it, especially when I'm throwing like a yum dinger and sparse vegetation, skipping docks. It's been awesome. So those are the lines I use, and that's basically the rundown. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope you enjoyed listening to my breakdown of, you know, the types of line and the brands that I use, and you know, hope you can apply it in your everyday fishing and have equal success that I'm having as well. So Stay tuned for the next video, and we'll see you next time.